Hello everyone, Heather here with Astrology with Heather.com, and I am back with another weekly forecast. This one is for Monday, November 4th, all the way through to Sunday, November 10th of 2019. And so this week, it's another kind of topsy-turvy week where we start off with a certain energy and then it really shifts dramatically by the time the week is up. And so we experienced something like this a couple of weeks ago when we ended with the full moon in Scorpio and this square between Saturn and Mars. And we started the week with something a little bit different, which was a nicer, more flowy, harmonious Neptunian energy. This is sort of the reversal of that. So we might find ourselves having a little bit of a struggle or a little bit of a hard time at the start of this week. But as the week moves on, things get much, much nicer. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so at the beginning of the week on Tuesday, which is November 5th, technically it's going to depend on where you're at, because this is going to happen at like 3:30 in the morning in Mountain Standard Time, like Denver time here in the United States. So if you are, living in different places, it might happen at different times. So it might be more of an influence on Monday. But either way, it's going to be the first like 3 days of the week we'll be really, really feeling this. And what's going to be happening is that Mars will be coming into a square with Pluto. This is a very intense energy. Mars and Pluto do tend to play well together because they're both co-rulers of Scorpio, which is the zodiac sign that we're sort of in right now in terms of the solar transits and the zodiac seasons. And so with Mars and Pluto in square, it challenges us to really focus very intensely on our goals and ambitions and deepest desires, but to do so without pushing a little too hard or hurting people in the process. And that's where we become a little bit more challenged. This can also bring up power struggles, control issues, arguments and disputes over resources or over power and control issues. Who has control and how do I fight and get back the control? That type of thing. And so it can be kind of a difficult energy. This is also an energy that's associated with crisis and, very traumatic, very acute situations that need to be addressed very promptly and in a way that's very focused, where you kind of detach yourself from the emotional implications of what it is that you're dealing with. People who have this type of aspect in their chart, they're very good at detaching themselves from the emotional experience or for anything that's distracting them from getting what needs to be done accomplished in the moment, especially in crisis situations. This is usually a very powerful aspect for people who work in crisis, who are maybe first responders. A lot of first responders have Mars Pluto aspects, either in conjunction, opposition, square, sometimes a trine or a more harmonious influence, but it usually indicates that they're very good under pressure. And so that's what we're going to be experiencing at the start of this week, is some sort of pressure, some sort of intense pressure to push forward and to focus on the task at hand. And this could come about in the form of some sort of crisis that really sweeps us off our feet and causes us to really have to drop whatever it is that we're doing, drop the emotional implications of the situation, and just push forward and really adhere to the task at hand. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this is also a good energy if you're not dealing with a big overt crisis, which not everybody will be. Certain signs will be more prone to that, but even within those signs, you might be able to channel this in a way that's more effective, especially if you have really strong Pluto or Mars or Scorpio energy in your birth chart. You're kind of used to this energy to a certain extent, and so it's easier for you to deal with it and work with it rather than work against it. And so what this does is it causes you to have to really hone in on what you truly and deeply desire in a certain area of your life, and to initiate some sort of action amidst maybe some turbulence, maybe some difficulty there. But the difficulty primarily when we're looking at Pluto is psychological, and even with Mars involved, which is very action oriented and very physical, it could just be some sort of psychological crisis, maybe a crisis of, hey, what I'm doing right now is not in alignment with my deepest truth, with my deepest desires and what I really, truly want for myself. And I need to take action to fix that, right? That could be, for a lot of people, this energy. And so we'll get into that a little bit more deeply when we get into the forecast for all 12 signs. But as we move past that time frame on Tuesday, things sort of shift. And even on Tuesday, the energy is kind of Neptunian because we start to have this energy of the moon moving into the sign of Pisces around 4 p.m. In Denver time. But depending on your time zone, it's going to be a little bit different. But then we have this whole midweek dominated by this moon and Pisces energy, and it culminates on Friday with the sun, which is in the sign of Scorpio, which is a deeply psychic, deeply passionate, deeply intuitive sign, coming into this beautiful trine with Neptune and Pisces, which is a mystical, magical energy that connects everything to everything else and helps us to tap into the interdimensional influences in our lives, the etheric realm, to understand things more energetically and empathically. And so this is a great time for us to really feel things out and to really tap into our intuition. And this is a great time for any sort of psychic or intuitive work because it's going to come through much more clearly, even for those who are not normally so adept at such things. And so that's one of the things that can really come up for you in a positive way. This is also a very idealistic energy where we're going to be sort of delving into the realms of dreams and fantasies and idealism. We're going to want to indulge a little bit, take a step back from the day-to-day reality of our lives and look at, what we want for ourselves in a more idealistic way. And whatever our biggest dreams are, whatever our biggest visions are for ourselves for the future, this energy is enhanced by Saturn coming into its final third sextile with Neptune, which helps us to actually manifest our dreams into reality in a way that's very pragmatic, that's very usable, that actually delivers something in a physical way or creates a better structure for us in our lives based on these dreams and fantasies that we have for our future. And this is something that, for a lot of people, we might have been working on this over the course of the entire year because this energy began at the start of 2019 and we're coming into, the end couple of months in 2019 now, and it's finally coming to fruition. It's finally reaching this point of resolution. So whatever it is that we've been working on cultivating and then turning into something very real and very practical and responsible, doing it in a way that's very responsible in our lives where we're not just like off floating in the clouds, dreaming about this, that, and the other thing and not actually doing something with it. We're doing something with it. And so if that's been something that's been a big theme for you this year, and for certain signs it will have been, and we will get into that of course as well. But if it has been a big theme for you this year, you can start to actually see some of the subtle manifestations of what it is that you've been working on. And this will only come about if you've been actively working on it, because this is a sextile aspect. A sextile aspect is a more subtle aspect. It's not like a trine, like the sun trine to Neptune, which is going to automatically put us in this state of imagination and intuition and interconnectedness in a way that just comes about very naturally without having to do very much to create those circumstances. Sextiles are a little bit different. They are harmonious, they are supportive, but they're supportive. They're not actually doing the work for us. And so we have to recognize the energy, take hold of it, and then take some sort of action. And so that's part of what this experience is going to bring about. And this is an influence that really has been culminating for a couple of weeks now. It's not necessarily that this is a one-time thing, because these are two outer planets. They move very, very slowly. And so this has been an energy that's been happening all year long, and it's been, becoming stronger and sort of peaking and then kind of going back and retreating. And it's been peaking for a couple of weeks now, but this is like the major point of release for this energy this week, and it's where it sort of comes to this culmination point. And of course, because it's the last pass of this aspect coming exact, it's the point of resolution. And so it's an exciting week. So the main takeaway here is that the week starts off in a way that's could feel a little intense, and we might have to deal with something that we don't really want to deal with, but we know that we have to. And for most people, it's going to be very easy to buckle down and focus on it. For some people, you might get caught up in power dynamics and struggles in that sense. But for others, it might be easier to navigate, and so we will talk about that. But then at the end of the week, things get really nice. And so this really brings a nice energy that carries forth into the weekend. And so, that's going to be really great. And it's a very Neptunian, very Piscean energy, which is a great segue into, I only have a couple of really quick announcements this week, but my Mastering Neptune webinar has been moved to November 23rd at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. If you register in advance, you can watch the full webinar, you can attend live and ask your questions and get a 25% discount off of the registration fee. And even if you can't attend live, there'll be a recorded version of this that'll be available to you right away after the fact. And this is a part of my Mastering the Outer Planets webinar series, which is also available at a discounted rate up until the 23rd of November. After the Neptune course is completed, then the whole entire series, the price of that will go up slightly. So if you want to get it at a discounted rate, you can do that now as well, and also get Uranus and Saturn, Pluto, and then a bonus webinar on Jupiter. And I'm excited for the Neptune webinar. I think I'm more excited about this one than the other two so far, because I have a lot of good information about Neptune. I've got a lot of Neptune energy in my chart, and I've recently had a lot of Neptune transits, so this is something I've really been researching heavily. And then my foundational astrology course, the video course, is now available for you to download and start learning from immediately. And you can get $20 to $50 off the course option of your choice if you order your course prior to November 23rd. And so that link is down in the description below. And the final thing is not an announcement about webinars and courses, but an announcement about my free content that I provide to you guys through my monthly astrology newsletter. You may have noticed that this month, if you are somebody who regularly reads the newsletter, that I didn't send one out. And that's because I'm going to be using this Mercury retrograde to sort of go back and review and change the way that I'm doing this content for this newsletter for you guys. I want to create more unique, original content that's delivered just to the people who are subscribed to this newsletter, beyond just doing another sort of forecast like I do every single week here on YouTube. I am going to create another way to deliver monthly forecasts for you guys in that short format outside of this, but for now, I'm working on creating things that are more unique, and I think I'm going to start back up with the newsletter after the Mercury retrograde, beginning with a guide to dealing with and utilizing the energy of Jupiter moving into the sign of Capricorn, which happens at the start of December already. We're out of Jupiter in Sagittarius and into Jupiter in Capricorn. Most people should be excited for that, by the way, because Jupiter in Capricorn is going to start to clean up some of the mess and build upon what has been deconstructed with this Saturn-Pluto conjunction that's been building and building and building and reaches its point of release in January. And so even though a lot of people are struggling with this, and even this week it's being activated with Mars and square to Pluto, it's not going to last for that much longer. And the results from what it is that you've had to deal with, the struggles that you've faced, what you've been working on, will come about in a way that's going to, first off, it's going to happen much more quickly than it normally would with Saturn's involvement, because Jupiter will swoop in and start to rebuild. But you're going to see why this has happened and get this sense of meaning and this sense of perspective on the experience a lot more easily and a lot more quickly, and benefits will come as a result of what it is that you've been working on, dealing with, deconstructing, ridding yourself of in terms of oppressive energy. So that's going to be an exciting time. So I'm happy that that's happening, and we'll have the nodes shifting too. So I'm going to do a whole thing for 2020 and all that too, but I guess this was an unintentional preview of what's coming up in the astrology, because I wasn't intending on talking about that just yet. But I will be doing something with that with my monthly newsletter. So just hold tight. I'm still going to be sending you guys really important astrological information in this newsletter. It's just not happening right now because I'm rethinking. I'm using this Mercury retrograde to rethink my approach and to do something that I'm more excited and passionate about, that I really want to write. Not that I don't love doing forecasts for you guys, but I do a lot of those. And so I wanted to do something different with this newsletter from here on out, where I'm writing about things that I'm researching or that I'm really interested in sharing with you guys, or just really excited about in general. So it makes it exciting for me and hopefully for you guys to get something that's not just another forecast in your inbox, because I know I get a lot of those from a lot of astrologers. And so anyway, moving on. Let's get into the forecast for all 12 signs, beginning with, of course, the sign of Aries. All right, and so for Aries and for Aries rising, so this energy at the start of this week with the square between Mars and Pluto is actually going to be impacting you very strongly, especially if you are somebody with an Aries sun, moon, or rising near that 20th degree. So near 20 degrees in the sign of Aries, you're going to be experiencing a T-square with your sun or your rising or your moon sign. And so this could be a little bit more intense for Aries people. Luckily, you're an Aries, so you're ruled by Mars, and so you're more easily able to adapt to situations that come on very suddenly. You're much more easily able to address crisis head on and just jump right in and initiate action and do what you need to do. But this energy could bring about a psychological crisis related to your work, related to your career path, related to your public reputation, or related to some sort of power struggle or oppressive energy in the workplace with bosses or people in positions of authority. And this could cause you to have to take some sort of action to renegotiate an agreement, to jump right in and to start something new, or to maybe even dispute something with a coworker or somebody who's higher up in your company or something like that. And so there could be power and control issues that come up, power struggles, arguments, disputes in the workplace this week, especially on a one-on-one level with you and somebody else, and especially if that somebody else is somebody who's in a position of authority. If you have your own business, this could even be you having to deal with something like a crisis involving your clients or some sort of contract or agreement that you've made, in business. And so just be aware that this might come up and be prepared to have to take some very decisive action in order to realign your goals and plans for your career or your business or your job if this isn't your career and it's something that you're just doing, or even involving just your public status and your public reputation if you're not somebody who works out in the world, because not everybody who's watching this does that. There might be some sort of power struggle with somebody in a position of authority, or there might be something you have to deal with involving maybe a rumor or something like that, a secret that comes to light, and you have to tackle that head on. And that's okay. Just make sure that you're doing it in a way that's tactful, that you're taking time to respond rather than just react, and that you're not hitting below the belt, because that's a huge danger with that Mars-Pluto square. Just getting very reactionary and just telling somebody what's up without really thinking about it, and then hurting people in the process, and hurting important relationships in the process. But luckily, the end of this week provides a lot of relief. You're going to be having this energy of the sun, first off, in this really nice trine with Neptune, which will be occurring in your 8th and in your 12th house. So this will be a really great time to take a step back, hide yourself away from the world a little bit, and just relax. Get some time for rest, right? Regroup. And by doing this, you might have a lot of information that comes to you through sort of outside sources, through like intuition or psychic energy, or just information that you're picking up on, or energies that you're picking up on, that can bring messages through symbolism, visions, downloads, and impressions that can help you to create a better situation for yourself, create the life that you're envisioning for yourself when it comes to your career. And that might even be stimulated by the need to do so because of the conflict that occurs earlier this week. But you'll start to be able to, if you haven't started manifesting something in that area yet, you'll start to be able to do so. And so that'll be a more pleasant energy. Kick back, relax, allow the information to come to you. Mercury's in retrograde. You don't have to figure everything out right now. Just absorb, right? Absorb and pay attention, because you're going to get some very good messages and some good intuitive hits on the way to resolve any issues with what you're doing in your career. All right. And then for Taurus and for Taurus rising. So this energy here with this square between Pluto and Mars is happening in your 6th house of work and daily routines. It's also the house of health. And Pluto in your 9th house. And so Pluto and Saturn together in your 9th house have been causing you to have to look at oppressive energies involving your beliefs, any dogmatic, rigid, oppressive structures involving religion, involving your philosophy on life, involving moral and ethical value systems. This could also also be oppressive energy around travel or connections with foreign countries that you've been working through and dealing with throughout this time, or through education, or maybe some sort of delay or difficulty that's felt really oppressive in your ability to educate yourself or to pursue the type of education that you desire. Part of this energy this week, though, is activating more that looking at your beliefs, looking at what you truly and deeply believe and desire for yourself, walking the walk and talking the talk when it comes to your moral and ethical value systems that you deeply and truly connect with and want to adhere to. And this is going to cause a struggle with the way that you deal with your everyday experience, where there could be some sort of conflict that comes up, and you could have to take a look at that. Maybe there's some sort of conflict in your workplace with Mars in the 6th house, and you find yourself acting in a way that's reactionary and doing things that are not living up to your moral and ethical code and standards. And so that could be an issue for you that you have to really address this week. Then this could bring up power struggles and conflicts, especially ethical issues in the workplace for you this week as well. This could also bring up ethical issues and power struggles and conflict around health and your daily health habits or healthcare providers. And so maybe you find that your healthcare provider is not in alignment with your values when it comes to ethics and the way that you live your life, and you realize, okay, maybe it's time to move past this. And I saw an example of this actually very recently on Facebook, I think in my group. So it's definitely can be coming up for you, and this might already have been an energy that's been building because of last week's transit with Mars square Saturn. And then later this week, though, you get a little bit of a break. And so this is a great time for you to go out and to indulge in connecting on a deep spiritual level with the people that you care about most. This is a great time to do some sort of charity work within a group. This is a great time to do something creative or spiritual or mystical and magical in some way with a group of friends, or with somebody that you really deeply care about, with that energy also impacting your 7th house. Maybe revisiting an old friendship or an old relationship that you really enjoyed and that worked really well for you that fell away, and doing something really fun together, doing something a little bit more creative where you're escaping from normal reality. Or doing something like even just going and like doing a paint and pour kind of thing, because that's what Neptune and Pisces reminds me of, when you're doing it when it's aligned in your 11th house or your 5th house, because it's like a fun creative activity. Neptune rules like painting and doing things that reflect reality in terms of that sort of visual representation. And the 11th house is a group of people, it's friends, so that could be a fun thing to do. By doing that, that's going to release a lot of energy, and you might actually get some really good insight into how to deal with any of the 9th house issues that we spoke about at the beginning of this little reading here. And so anything that you've been really visualizing for yourself when it comes to foreign travel or connection with foreign cultures, when it comes to adventure, when it comes to higher educational pursuits, when it comes to you coming into your own power as a teacher or something along those lines as well. Anything you've been really sort of mulling over in that area or envisioning for yourself, now is a time where you can take actionable steps to bring that to fruition, especially if you recruit the help of a group or the help of your friends. So that's something that you can really work on this week as well. All right, and for Gemini rising. So for you guys, this Pluto square to Mars is happening in your 5th and in your 8th house. And so there could be a few different things going on here. So Pluto in the 8th house, Pluto actually, is kind of at home in the 8th house. It does quite well there to a certain extent, but it doesn't necessarily feel good as it's doing what it does. And so Pluto in the 8th house has been bringing up some challenges and being activated by Saturn as well around debt, joint finances, inheritance, other people's money, taxes, death even, rebirth, that energy of transformation, and also causing you to have to really dig deep and to look at your deepest wounds, fears, insecurities, your deepest traumas that you carry with you in this lifetime, and that maybe you need to work on, heal, and move past. And so there could be an issue that comes up this week involving children, involving play, involving a romantic connection with somebody that causes you to have to look at that and causes you to have to make a very quick, decisive action to address what needs to be addressed in the area of power struggles, in the area of deep inner work and healing, and maybe even in the area of finance. And so, a dispute maybe around children or around, child care could come up that would cause you to have to address these types of things. And that's just important to make note of. And this could also bring arguments, disputes, and power struggles in intimate romantic partnerships, especially ones that are not necessarily marriage, like affairs, flings, short-lived relationships. And so that's just something to be aware of, that you might have to take some time to address very promptly at the start of this week. But, for the most part, this energy with Mars, if you're a Gemini sun, moon, and rising near that 20th degree, it's not going to be impacting you in a way that's so detrimental. That Pluto energy, it brings up some difficulty. But because Mars is actually going to be squaring your ascendant or, your sun, this is going to make it so you can very easily take the right action and do so very decisively and have the energy to follow through with whatever your intentions or ambitions are. So it's not going to be quite as difficult for you as for some of the other signs when it comes to that square. But later on this week, regardless of what goes on and how difficult it is at the start of this week, you're going to have a lot of really positive energy that's coming up for you around work and around your daily work routines. And so if you're somebody who's engaged in any sort of creative pursuits for your work, now is a time where you can really jump right in and you can have a lot of really great visions and a lot of really great ideas that sort of come to you from the ethers fully formed. This is a really great time for any sort of spiritual or mystical work. And even if it's not, this is a good time for you to become more compassionate and more empathic in the workplace, if that's something that's needed for you. But this is a time where you can be recognized for your creative work and for the energy you've been putting into those types of pursuits, the spiritual and creative endeavors on a day-to-day basis. Even if that doesn't necessarily tie in with your career, it could tie in with something that you've been working on. And this is also an energy where you can discern information through visions and symbolisms and downloads and impressions related to anything that has to do with your health or any health issues that you've been sort of working through and working on. And this is an especially good time to go back and sort of revisit that energy with Mercury in retrograde. The energy with Saturn is actually happening in your 8th house. And so if you do have any issues involving healing, trauma, power struggles, difficulties that come up for you at the beginning of this week, it's going to be very easy for you to sort of work through that and work on it, especially if you're focusing on your work and your daily habits and maybe incorporating more creativity and spirituality into your daily habits and into your work. It's going to help you to sort of release some energy and to allow things to flow so that way you can create better circumstances for yourself moving forward and create a better structure, especially if you're somebody who's thinking about something very physical and tangible in the 8th house, like debt or other people's money, joint finances through marriage, or if your joint finances through marriage have been restricted because of Saturn's influence in the 8th house, which could be the case for many of you guys. Your own efforts and your own creative endeavors and your own pursuits when it comes to your day-to-day work routines and working really hard can actually help you to resolve a lot of those issues right now. Oh, geez. All right. I have too many things on my desk again. Per usual, I need a bigger desk, like a giant one that just takes up my whole office space here, so I can have all my piles of all my notes all over the place. But anyway, so moving on to Cancer and Cancer rising. For you guys, you're going to have Mars square Pluto happening in your 4th and in your 7th house. And so there might be something that you really need to take action on and address involving your home, your family, your property, and especially family relationships and power and control issues and power dynamics in family relationships. And so, it could be a little dicey. There could be arguments, disputes, difficulties, maybe even involving your spouse or significant other, especially if you live together. And even if you don't, you might have to address something involving these themes. But the main thing is that there could be some conflict. There could be something that you really have to take action on. And that could even be something like, negotiating a contract or dealing with some sort of issue involving a contract or involving an agreement for a living situation that just becomes very pressing, and you have to immediately just jump right in and take action on it, and address it. Just make sure that if that is the case, in either situation, if it's a family relationship that you have to take action on, or you have to address some sort of dispute, or if it's a contract, make sure that you're taking the time to respond rather than react. With Pluto square Mars, it's good to remove yourself from the situation and take some time, give yourself some space to unleash some of that really supercharged, intense energy prior to addressing the situation. It might almost be your inclination right now. And for those who have your Cancer, Sun, Moon, or Rising near that 20th degree, this is going to be impacting you the most. So this might be a very challenging start to the week. However, for those of you who have this influence, the end of this week could bring opportunities to sort of redeem yourself or to redeem the energy of the week. It can bring really powerful opportunities to revitalize and enhance your romance with your partner in order to strengthen the relationship. This can help you to be much more empathic and compassionate in anything that involves romance, or even your relationship with children, if that's something, especially if that's something that came up at the beginning of this week, maybe in your family situation. The end of this week is a really great time to indulge in fantasy and play, and really engage in this childlike energy, either with your children or just kind of in general, maybe with a romantic partner, or maybe just by doing something that you really and truly love to do. And so this is a really creative, intuitive energy. And maybe even it's that you really want to dive into some sort of philosophical pursuit, some sort of adventure that's mystical and magical or creative in some way. And this brings the opportunity to do that, and to do that in partnership with somebody, in order to strengthen and reinforce and recommit yourself to that partnership moving forward. All right, and for Leo rising. So this energy for Leos is happening in your third and in your sixth house. And every time I've had an energy like this in my third and my sixth house, I know exactly what tends to happen. So for Leo risings, you might be on the receiving end of some difficult communication in the workplace. And so it could be clients, it could be coworkers especially, it could be people that work for you, but you might be dealing with a lot of intensity. You might be dealing with anger and power struggles. And it could even be coming from you. Maybe you're angry at, somebody who works for you. Maybe you're angry at a coworker. And, it's important to make sure that you're not just going out and reacting and, hurting these people and hurting your relationships and the dynamic between you and these people in your workplace. If that is the case for you, take a step back, separate yourself, seclude yourself from the situation, give yourself time to discharge some of that energy, and then respond. Even though, yes, it does require, to a certain extent, immediate action, and you don't have to do it right that second, especially if there's a risk of you saying something hurtful or ruining an important relationship in the workplace. But the other thing too is that this could just bring up power struggles within the workplace. Maybe they don't involve you, but you feel like you need to get involved. Maybe this brings up issues or some sort of really intense communication around health and around the health of you or the health of somebody close to you, and you have to address that. Or even the health of a pet, or situations around animals or pets could come up for you this week too, that you really have to really jump in and just address full force. Like maybe there's some sort of a crisis and you have to, jump in and take your dog to the emergency vet or something like that. But if that is the case, it's likely that it'll be resolved by the end of this week. So, just make sure that you're on top of things. If you see something arising that could prove to be a bigger situation in that area of life. And then when it comes to the end of this week, this is where a lot of the issues from the start of this week might be resolved, and they might seem like they're being resolved quite magically, or just in a way that flows in quite easily for you. This is a great energy for spending time at home, spending time in your immediate environment, connecting with your family, with the sun, and Mercury retrograding in your fourth house as well. But the sun in this really nice trine with Neptune in your eighth house, this is a time to forge deep, intimate spiritual connections with your family. This is also a really great time to just spend time at home, spend time focusing on your inner needs, your emotional needs. and do some deep healing work. Do some sort of spiritual practice that provides some form of deep emotional and psychological healing, because that'll come through quite easily for you right now. If you've been dealing with issues, especially with Neptune transiting the 8th house, of this energy sort of dissolving your joint finances and partnership, or causing a lot of confusion around resources, especially things like debt, taxes, other people's money, spending time at home and taking yourself out of the situation for a little while can actually help you to and visualizing what you want to create. That's another thing too with this Neptune energy, can actually help to create a lot of really incredible progress in that area. And taking this time for yourself will actually help to provide insight and inspiration, and will help you to create some sort of vision for what you want for yourself in the workplace, so that way you don't have these power struggles, this oppressive energy, these control dynamics moving forward. All right, and then for Virgo and for Virgo rising. So for you guys, this energy here with the square is happening in your 2nd house of resources and your 5th house of love and relationships and children and play and romance. And so there could be a little bit of a conflict that comes up here. The main thing is there might be something you have to really take action on involving your resources at the start of this week. And it could feel like a bit of a crisis. It's mostly going to be a psychological crisis that causes you to take action in order to create better situations for yourself in the future, so you can connect with what you're truly passionate about and what you deeply and truly desire when it comes to finding joy and expressing yourself creatively in the future. This could also free up energy for you to spend more time, in play, or focusing on your children, or focusing on romance and, your passions, and creating deeper intimacy in romantic relationships. But there's something going on here involving finances that might need to be addressed, and that might be quite pressing at the start of this week. Later on in the week, the energy gets a lot easier, and you actually have really great energy for communication and relationships, and communicating, especially in creating this deeper connection and just feeling empathic and compassionate toward your partner, and facilitating that through communication is going to be a really great way to revitalize your romance and your passion for one another in a way that lasts a very long time, and that sort of recommits you to that aspect of your relationship. So if you are in a relationship, like a romantic partnership, this is a great time to connect at the end of this week. Even if you're not, this could be a great time to, go out and go on a date or something like that, because you can have a romantic partnership that comes up right now that might be long lasting. The Mercury retrograde changes things a little bit, but maybe you're a Mercury retrograde person who has Mercury retrograde in your chart, in which case this could be a good time for that. So, but in either case, this is a really great week for loving, compassionate, creative communication, for deepening spiritual bonds with people that you care about, romantic or otherwise, and utilizing that for something very practical that helps you to reinforce this energy of creating structures in your life that allow you the time and space to experience more joy. All right, and then for Libra and for Libra rising. Where are you? All right, for Libras, let me make sure I'm not losing this here. For Libras, this is going to be another turbulent week. For the cardinal signs, there's just been a lot of difficult energy over the past, few weeks or few months, really. And it is going to lift at the start of next year. So I wouldn't, don't get too worried about that. It's something that's it's a phase in your life, and it's a time that's going to pass, but there could be a reigniting of that energy. So there could be something that you really have to take action on this week, involving your home, your property, your family, your place of living, your living situation, or even like people you live with, like roommates or something like that, where there could be disputes, arguments, power struggles around contracts and agreements related to your place of living. And a lot of that energy will be directed toward you, and you'll have to take action on it, and you could feel very fired up and very reactive right now. And so you want to make sure that in this particular circumstance, that you're addressing what needs to be addressed. You're facing it head on, but you're making sure that you're not just hitting below the belt. You're not doing and saying things that you might later regret because you feel so intensely and you feel so defensive right now. You want to take a step back. You want to look at the situation, objectively. Maybe seclude yourself from the situation for a short amount of time, at least, until you have time to discharge some of that intensity, and then address it. And so if that is the case for you, that's definitely what I recommend. And later this week, the energy in your home life gets a lot easier. And so first off, at the end of this week and into the weekend, there's potential for you to get some sort of financial compensation or financial recognition, especially for creative endeavors that you've been engaged in the workplace and in your day-to-day work experience, especially for just being compassionate and loving when it comes to your work experience and your connection with your coworkers. You can definitely get some sort of financial recognition coming in for you this week, especially if you're somebody who works in a field related to spirituality, mysticism, film, photography, creativity, or even health. If you work in a hospital or if you're a doctor or something like that, that could be applicable to you as well. But in general, somebody just might feel compassion toward you and you might get some sort of reward financially, like a bonus or something like that comes in unexpectedly. But by the end of this week, also looking at your day-to-day routines and sort of how those flow in harmony and how those feel to you, and visualizing what you want for yourself when it comes to your day-to-day routines, not just in the workplace and not just related to the way that you create resources, but the way that you utilize your resources. So what do you want for yourself financially, and how does that relate to your home and your living situation and your relationship with your family? Taking that into account and really visualizing what you want can help you to manifest and create through your actions, through your work, the life that you want for yourself, the home life that you want for yourself moving forward. All right. And then for Scorpio and Scorpio rising, this square here is happening in your third house of communication and in your 12th house, which is the house of secrets and hidden enemies. And so Mars in the 12th house often brings hidden enemies to light because they're acting very intensely against you. That doesn't mean you have hidden enemies and they're like gossiping and doing things to you behind the scenes. But if that is the case, it's going to become more apparent this week, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to address. And so, making sure that you're responding rather than reacting, and, doing things in a way that's appropriate, where you're not going to be hurting other people in the process, I think is going to be the best way to address this. But Scorpios are way better at navigating this Pluto-Mars energy than any of the other signs. And so you'll know what to do and how to do it. You might be a little bit defensive as a result of anything that comes in for you, but you'll know what to do. And if that's not the case for you, this could just be you needing to take some sort of action. You could feel really intense around communications that are coming in. You could feel burdened or oppressed by technology or by communication or by some sort of marketing plan or, writing something really important. Emails, text messages, and phone calls could feel much more oppressive and much more intense as a result of this energy. And it might cause you to just need to take action to disconnect yourself in the 12th house, to take time out. You might have to just jump right into resting and relaxing, although it's going to be hard for you to truly and completely decompress and relax at the start of this week. And so you're going to have to channel that energy into something, channeling it into, spiritual disciplines, spiritual pursuits, channeling it into, creativity, channeling it into doing some sort of subconscious inner work can be a really great outlet for this energy. You might just feel like you want to just go on some sort of spiritual retreat or go to some place where you're hidden away from the world. And that's okay. But just know at the start of this week, it might not feel quite as relaxing as you want it to. Later on this week, though, especially toward the end of the week, it's a great time for Scorpios, especially anyone who has Scorpio, Sun, Moon, or Rising near that 16th degree, to indulge in anything that you love to do because you love to do it. Anything that feels like play, anything that brings you joy, to indulge in fantasy, to create deep spiritual bonds with your children, to do creative activities with your children, or to do creative spiritual sort of oriented activities within a partnership. a romantic partnership in particular is what I'm speaking of here. This is going to help you to feel much more creative, much more intuitive, to feel just good. It's a great time to just take yourself out of the day-to-day busyness of everyday life at the end of this week and to put yourself in this space of receptivity, creativity, spirituality, and spiritual pursuits, and to just indulge in the things that feel like play to you. And for a lot of Scorpio risings, diving into those spiritual, mystical realms is your form of play, because you have Pisces as the ruler of the 5th house. And so this is going to be a great time for you. And by doing this is going to actually help you to pull away and to potentially get some sort of vision or impression or message that allows you to help restructure the energy around communication, so you don't have to deal with such intensity moving forward. And that can come quite naturally through engaging with this energy. All right, for Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising. So for you guys, there could be some difficulties that are brought up. So especially if you've been dealing with power struggles in the workplace, or power struggles related to finances, difficulties related to joint finances, or related to debt, or related to just the way that you create your resources, and maybe feeling oppressed or burdened by that activity or by that situation in your life, or being oppressed or burdened by the lack of resources, if that's the case for you, there's something that might come up that might trigger that and might require that you take some sort of immediate decisive action around dealing with the energy of resources. The energy with Mars in the 11th house could also bring disputes, arguments, or the need to take some sort of very intense decisive action related to your friends, your social networks, or group activities, or groups and organizations that you're a part of. It might feel like you have to charge in and jump right in and maybe fight someone in order to, take back control of the situation. But I definitely recommend in any of the houses where this deals with like communication and relationships with people, which is what I've been talking about for all of the signs that have placements like this with this square, I recommend taking time to separate yourself from the situation, even though it does require decisive action and you can't take too long. You need to decompress and make sure that you're not being reactionary, because you can really hurt important relationships through what it is that you say and do at this time. And for you, you could lose a friend, or you could come into a big argument with a friend that, changes the relationship in a way that's not necessarily positive. So you want to make sure you're taking that space. But later this week is a really great time for you to just rest. We've been saying this a lot, or I've been saying this a lot. I don't know if because I don't listen to a lot of forecasts from other astrologers, but I've been saying a lot that this sun trine to Neptune, or that the sun in Scorpio and Mercury retrograding in Scorpio, that this energy is a great time for you to take a step back, decompress, pull yourself out of day-to-day reality, because you're about to have your cosmic reset. Whether you're a Sagittarius sun sign and you're about to have your solar return and you're sort of in the dark phase or the introspective phase of your solar cycle, or if you're a Sagittarius rising and you're having the sun about to hit your ascendant once it moves out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius next month, you're in this phase where you're becoming more introspective, more intuitive, more contemplative, where you might feel like you just want to hide away from the world a little bit. And the end of this week provides a great opportunity for you to do that. And I know my husband's a Sagittarius rising, and he's been saying he just wants to stay home and hide out. Like he doesn't feel like going out into the world right now, but he's been forced to. And so this could provide a great opportunity for people who are experiencing similar sensations to actually decompress, to spend time at home, to just focus inward, and to figure out what it is that you want when you have that cosmic reset, what intentions you want to set for yourself for the year ahead. Again, whether or not you're a sun sign Sagittarius or a rising sign Sagittarius, this will be applicable to you. And if you are a Sagittarius sun sign, your sun sign solar return forecast is now available for you to download the 2-hour forecast for your year ahead. So you can get a lot of really great, really important information in a detailed way about everything that you're going to be experiencing in terms of just how it relates to your sun sign for the year ahead. So you can create really good, solid intentions that you can really work on for the next year, so you know what you'll be dealing with ahead of time. But so anyway, that's down in the description below. But this is going to be a really great time if you do actually take that time out, even if you feel like you should be working or you should be addressing this, that, and the other thing. If you take that time for rest, This is going to really help you to figure out what you want. So visualizing what you desire when it comes to time for rest, when it comes to taking a break and a vacation, when it comes to your spiritual disciplines and spiritual activities, when it comes to your home and family life. Taking time to visualize that, put it in your head, feel it as if you're experiencing it in the moment, as if it's already occurred. If you're able to do that and to tie that into what you need financially to make that happen, now's a time where you can actually take action. You can put in the work to create those structures and circumstances for yourself moving forward, so you don't have that oppressive energy when it comes to finances moving on from this time. So this is going to be a really fruitful time for you to engage in that sort of activity. And then for Capricorn and Capricorn rising. So for you guys, you're having the Pluto square to Mars, or the Mars square to Pluto, I should say, affecting you a little bit more intensely. Again, all the cardinal signs will be feeling this a little bit more strongly than the other signs. And you, Capricorn, have been probably hit the hardest out of all of the signs this year when it comes to just major planetary transits, because you've had Saturn, Pluto, and the South Node and eclipses happening in your sign. And so this might be triggering a lot of those energies that have been coming up for you time and time again this year, around feeling oppressed and burdened and bogged down by responsibility, or limited and restricted in your ability to connect with your goals, your direction in life, your own self-interest. And that might come from this week, some sort of situation or crisis on a psychological or even a physical level that requires immediate action for you, related to your work, your career, your public reputation, or public activities in some sort of way. And so you could get some sort of like nasty email from your boss, or you could, have a project that all of a sudden needs to be completed, and it feels really like a lot of pressure, and you feel oppressed and restricted by this energy. But if you push through and you address it, and you don't become reactionary if it does involve other people, then you can really push through and make a lot of headway. And if you face those challenges head on, if you put in the work at the start of this week, the end of this week will provide ample reward through connections with other people, through diving deep into spiritual or creative study or pursuits on a mental level. This is a really great time to go out with friends and just to connect with people that you love to surround yourself with, that you feel deeply connected to on an intimate spiritual level, to forge greater connections with your community or with organizations that you're a part of, to do something charitable, because that'll feel really good for you right now. And if you engage in communication with groups of people, if you go out with your friends, if you connect in communication in any sort of way in relationship with other people, this is going to help to stimulate the energy of you really figuring out what you truly want for yourself on a personal level, and how to restructure your life moving forward so you have more space for the things that you desire, so you can visualize it. You can even write it down. This would be a really great time for journaling about the visions that you have for your future, and maybe bouncing those ideas off of a group or off of friends, and then taking actionable steps to create these situations and restructure your life. Okay, and then for Aquarius and Aquarius rising. So for you guys, you're going to have this Pluto square to Mars happening in your 9th house and in your 12th house. And so this isn't going to be quite as intense of an energy as it will be for some of the other signs. For, Geminis and Aquarius, you both have this energy of Mars in trine with your ascendant. And so if something is bubbling up, and what might be bubbling up for you might be a lot of intensity around being in isolation, or around feeling like you're isolated or secluded in some sort of way. Maybe you had to separate yourself from the world for a bit of time for whatever reason, maybe just because internally or psychologically you felt like it was necessary in order to heal through something. You might be experiencing more intensity and more what would you say? How would you phrase that? More, I know the word. Mercury retrograde always makes me lose my words like that. I know the word that I'm thinking about, but it's going to be like that. It's more that you need to deal with it right now in the moment. Like it just becomes more intense and more necessary for you to take immediate, really decisive action in order to create or facilitate more healing for yourself, to speed up that healing process. It becomes more urgent. There's a sense of urgency around it. And so, and that could have to do, there could be some sort of philosophical question or some question about your ethics or belief systems that cause you to have to sort of look at things and look at the way that you deal with the world. This could be a crisis of endings that's brought on by some sort of spiritual or religious or ethical crisis, and where you have to let go of something that you've been holding on to for quite some time on a subconscious or conscious level. And so this is something that you're going to have to address, but you're going to know exactly how to address it, and you're going to be able to take action and face it head on. This could also bring about some sort of crisis or need to take action involving foreign countries or connections with people in foreign lands or travel plans. Again, though, for Aquarius, this is going to be a little bit easier to deal with than it will be for the other signs, especially if you're an Aquarius with your sun, moon, or rising near that 20th degree. Later this week, though, things feel a lot nicer. And so you'll have some really great energy around your work, which is, a Scorpio season thing. You're going to be out there in the world, putting yourself out there, putting your name out there a little bit more so than you normally would be. And you can actually, if you really visualize what you want for yourself when it comes to your career and your goals and plans for the future with your career, and when it comes to the financial situation tied to those activities, you can really start to take actionable steps, kind of more behind the scenes, in order to create these circumstances for yourself moving forward. But this is a time where you might get some sort of recognition, especially for any sort of creative pursuit or any sort of spiritual or mystical pursuit related to your career path. And it might come in, just flow in unexpectedly, exactly when you need it to happen. All right, and then for Pisces and for Pisces rising. So for Pisces rising, this energy at the start of the week is going to potentially bring power struggles and conflict involving group situations or groups of people that you surround yourself with by choice. And this includes groups of friends, social activities. This includes groups or organizations that you are a part of or a member of. And so you might have to deal with some sort of intensity or power struggles, or you might have some sort of conflict within that group that you have to address. This could also bring up some need to take really intense, decisive action around 8th house themes involving joint finances in marriage. Maybe there's arguments and disputes around resources in partnership. Maybe there's something you have to address involving debt or taxes or other people's money or inheritance or some sort of insurance claim. And it feels very pressing and it feels very intense, but you'll be able to really jump in there and do what you need to do. The issue here is just making sure, because this is dealing with 11th house themes as well, if there are power struggles or disputes amongst friends, that you don't just jump in, even though you have to address it. You don't just jump in all crazy if you're feeling really heated. Make sure that you take some time to take a step back, and to, really seclude yourself from the situation, at least for a brief period of time, so you can discharge some of that intensity, so you're not saying and doing things you might later regret that might cause further issues later on down the line. At the end of this week, though, this is one of the nicest times for Pisces, because you're going to have the sun in trine with your ascendant sign and with Neptune in your ascendant sign. And so this is a really great time for you to take a break, right? Go have an adventure with the sun in your 9th house. Even though Mercury's retrograding there might be some hiccups, with travel plans and delays and things like that. But the sun energy is kind of compensating for that. So going and traveling, going out and having an adventure, indulging in some sort of spiritual pursuit, education-wise, in terms of gathering information, taking a class that teaches you how to do something really creative and intuitive, that's going to be a really great way to utilize this energy. Even if you don't have the opportunity to indulge in such things, this is a really great time where you can gain a really good sense of perspective on your life, and you can especially gain a sense of perspective on what's been going on in your social circle and with your friendships and those types of relationships, because there's been a lot of difficult, challenging energy there with Pluto and Saturn in the South Node. And so this is a time where if you take a step back and sort of just contemplate, use your intuition, meditate on it, or even visualize what you actually want for yourself when it comes to your friendships, now is a time where you can take actionable steps to create the situation that you want for yourself, so you don't have such struggles and difficulties moving forward. And so you have really good, solid, deeply spiritual connections within your social circle, which you might feel like you're lacking right now, because a lot of times when Pluto and Saturn transit the 11th house, you can feel like your friendships are limited and restricted in some way. Either you can't connect with them due to circumstances, or maybe you're losing friendships and having to let go of oppressive relationships, or some other sort of situation came about that caused you to have to separate yourself in some way. Now's the time where now that you have that space, you can take a step back. What do you actually want? What type of people do you want to surround yourself with? And visualize how that feels to have these wonderful, really great, deeply intimate, deeply connected friendships, and create situations for yourself. Maybe the actionable steps are that you join a new group or organization that's more in alignment with what you value and what you want. Maybe you join some sort of creative group or something like that. Or this is actually a great time for networking for work or something like that as well at the end of this week. So however you use this energy, of course, is your choice, but the end results are going to be positive when it comes to restructuring important group connections this week. All right, and so that is my forecast for all 12 signs. If you enjoyed this forecast and you feel like it has value, please like and subscribe to my channel, and share this with your friends if you feel like, maybe they can benefit from the insight that I've given to you guys this week. And be sure to follow me on Instagram. My handle is @astrologywithheather, and I'm sharing lots of astrological tidbits and information throughout the week that you can find there, and you can stay connected and see what's going on. And I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.